You are listening to the Sacred Pathways podcast, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. I am your host and co-journer, Sydney Searchwell Simpson, and I am thrilled to walk this journey with you. Bismillah. Let us begin. Welcome, everyone, to the Sacred Pathways podcast, where we share stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. Today, I have two wonderful, devoted, lovely guests, Kevala and Taravali, Tara, who are a part of the Kirtan Culture Initiative. And so we'll just welcome them into the space. And we also have a beautiful guest as well. a sweet Yamuna. Welcome to the space.
This is our youngest daughter. Yes, Yamuna.
Yeah, welcome.
She'll be popping
How's
in
your
at
heart?
time.
Yeah. How's your heart feeling today?
I think, we are parents to three little girls, and we're always, I call us a traveling circus show. So at any point in time, we don't know what's going to happen. But today's been a good day so far.
Yeah,
Thank you for asking.
Beautiful. So today we plan on talking about Bhakti, Kirtan, and devotional love, and anything that flows in between that. But we actually want to start with an invocation.
Yes.
So they're going to bless us with the beauty of invocation and kirtan before we dive in.
So maybe if it's okay with your permission, Sydney, I'll just share a little bit of what Taravali will chant.
Please.
We do this at almost every one of our kirtans. We open up with an invocation mantra or set of mantras. The idea being that it invokes the mood of gratitude. We consider ourselves just humble tools to share an age-old tradition, and so it behooves us to thank the long lineage of teachers where this comes from. This knowledge of bhakti and chanting and kirtan come from. So this is a nice mantra to remind us of gratitude towards teachers.
Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshta Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Just taking a second to soak up the medicine, the magic of mantra, and of your magic together. For those who don't know, I met Kevala and Tara at a Kirtan event in November and was just so touched and moved by the sincerity in their devotion and expression. And so when the time came to start this podcast, I was like, all right, we're going to do it. So thank you. Thank you for invoking the spirit of gratitude into the space, and inviting folks who might not be familiar with mantra and kirtan to experience just like a little sliver.
Well, we're honored to be here, and thank you for what you're doing. And we apologize if we're moving around a little bit, attending to Yamuna as we chat, but we appreciate the free flow nature of what you're doing, and frankly, the consciousness you're creating by doing this. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here.
You mentioned earlier honoring the lineage and the tradition from which this medicine comes from. So maybe you can just give listeners an understanding of what bhakti is and maybe how that shows up in your life.
Yeah, so for those who have been practitioners of yoga, for a long time, bhakti would likely be familiar. For those who might not know, then yoga is familiar. It's pretty mainstream. A lot of folks who might not practice yoga might associate the word with the physical process of yoga. And we think about yoga studios and getting a really fit bod and Lululemon and that kind of stuff. And all that is great. The physical postures or asanas are indeed a really important part of yoga. I can say this being a product of both the East and the West. I have cultural roots from the East in India, but born and raised here in Canada, that we're really good at the Western culture of taking the part we like and running with it. So the physical part of yoga is very, very popular. What mature yoga students are learning is that there is a holistic, heartfelt, devotional path to yoga as well that incorporates a full lifestyle. So that's where bhakti begins, where focused on the heart space, focused on the yoga of love, the yoga of devotion, channeled towards the divine. And it is practiced in many ways. It's very practical. And one of the more, I guess you could say, core elements of bhakti is kirtan, coming together and chanting mantras in a joyful mood. So that's very much a part of the bhakti path. But it boils down to a very heartfelt yoga process.
Yes, I appreciate you sharing the Western tendency to take what it is that we like from certain practices and then disregard the rest, because it's funny, I've been practicing asanas since I was 12, but it was only when I connected to the Yoga Sutras, it was only when I connected to the Bhakti Path and mantra and kirtan that I was like, whoa, if we embrace this as much as we embrace asanas, the world would be a completely different place. You know, our relationships would be so much more harmonious. And
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're meant to go hand in hand. One is not meant to usurp the other. Rather, it's more that if following the bhakti path can really lift up your asana practice. And the asanas are meant to prep the body to allow the heart to be activated in bhakti. So they work hand in hand, actually, ideally.
they do. Ideally, yes. You mentioned the heart. Can you speak a little bit more about that, like the role of the heart in bhakti? Yeah, and that'll be such a perfect segue into kirtan too.
Yeah, in the ancient scriptures, it is said that our heart, the soul resides. So us, like we are, I am there in
Like our true self.
yeah, our true self. So that's in the heart space. And also beside it is actually the divine presence as well. So that's why we always focus on the heart. And it's described that the divine presence is just there kind of watching us, you know, do whatever we do in our daily life and making choices. And that's where the intuition comes, right? Like you sometimes feel something, oh, like, yeah, I really feel like this is the right choice. But where does it come from? It comes from the divine. The answers come from there. So that's why I think we focus on the heart.
Yeah, and I would just add that everyone says it. I mean, why do we always say this? That it's coming from my heart, or this is like right from the heart, singing from the heart, or my hobby, it's like right from my heart. I mean, we just culturally seem to accept that this is, you know, kind of a very sacred space for all of us. And a good example of that would be if you ask someone, point to your ear, point to your eye, point to your head, point to your shoulder, but point to yourself. We generally kind of point to this general area, yeah. And we have this idea, we have this subconscious or this intuitive idea that like this is where I am, somewhere here. And so the Bhakti tradition or the ancient yoga texts say, yeah, in the vicinity of the heart, as the words are used, in the vicinity of the heart lies our true self, Atma, our soul. And next to that, like Tara just beautifully said, the witness, the divine presence in all of us. So that's the space that we try to occupy and stay centered on, and where we try to focus all of our actions and thoughts and behaviors. Yeah.
Yes, completely. I really appreciate your mentioning of the intuitive, universal nature to sort of regard oneself within this vicinity, the location of our physical heart, but like you mentioned, the deeper spiritual heart that's at the core of everything. I would love to know, I mean, I'm not familiar with your histories. I mean, Kevala, you mentioned that you have, roots in India and were born here. And I remember at the Kirtan event, I had overheard you speaking, Tara, about how your family practiced Kirtan, ever since probably before you were born. So I would just love to hear about the roots of your journey into this path and then the conscious choice to walk it.
Yeah, that's a powerful question. I mean, I think my answer is less adventurous than Taravali's, although, yeah, I mean, my parents are from India, and they were part of one of those very first waves of immigration to Canada in the early 70s. In fact, my dad first landed in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, in a teaching role, and then eventually came to Canada, which makes me wonder, what would my life be if he stayed in Memphis, Tennessee? I'd be doing kirtan with a banjo. And eventually settled in Toronto, Canada, and then my mom came, and then me and all my siblings were born and raised kind of with this cultural practice. And then I think my dad in 1976 met Bhaktivedanta Swami, who is kind of like who is known as the great guru or teacher that helped to bring bhakti or the Hare Krishna culture to the West.
Yes.
And when he met him here in Toronto, he was like, that's it. That kind of all my spiritual practice that I've had up till now kind of now clicks into a shape and a form. And for my mom, very much raised the same way. So yeah, it was like a very interesting, kind of very immigrant experience growing up, because me and all my three siblings were born and raised here in Toronto and largely Western. I mean, we're coconuts. We're brown on the outside and very Canadian Anglo on the inside. We grew up with this very Westernized culture. So my parents tried to bridge or harmonize that by keeping spirituality as a big practice. And so Kirtan and Bhakti and the Gita and, the idea of starting the morning in a sacred space with prayer and puja was really important. And like most kids, when I was in my teens, I kind of faced that crossroads. Do I just kind of like continue on with this personal path? Or do I just kind of carve my own way? And personally, I was extremely inquisitive. So I studied other faiths and learned about Buddhism and Islam and had a lot of familiarity with Christianity as it was, but it kind of came full circle. And in my kind of late-ish teens, 17, 18, said like, hey, this is something that speaks to me, and kind of became more serious in it. And Kirtan was so instrumental, pun fully intended there, to be part of that. And it's been now, gosh, I'm 43 now. So going on over close to 25 years of more kind of like seriously practicing this path of bhakti. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. What about you?
For me, I think it's similar in a way that I also grew up in the Bhakti Yoga practice. So what happened, actually, I'm originally from Russia, and my parents met the Bhakti Yoga practitioners, I would say in the late 80s. Then my sister and I were born, and both of us were kind of brought up in this culture as well. You would think like, what are the odds in the South Russia where it's a predominantly Muslim area, and here we are like the Bhakti Yoga practitioners doing kirtan and having regular programs at our home with other similar people, and I just have all these impressions from my childhood of remembering my dad doing certain worship and like chanting, and we were constantly surrounded by this atmosphere, but the spiritual atmosphere, but the sounds of kirtan, and so kind of similar in that way. And then we're always used to move. Like I remember changing schools and changing places, but wherever we went, we kind of always looked for the center or the place where the
Bhakti communities.
Bhakti communities are, and we kind of always, we're part of it. And then we also immigrated to Israel when I was a teenager, and same thing. We went through a period of time there when teenage years are not easy. So I remember my sister and I were kind of drifting a little bit away from this whole practice, but we're kind of naturally drawn back to it once we met Bhakti Yoga practitioners, because I guess, whatever is a part of your childhood, it doesn't take much for it to kind of reignite again that desire to be part of it again. And so in Israel, we were part of the community, Bhakti community, and then we immigrated to Canada. And the first thing we did is to look for Bhakti community here. So this is actually how my husband and I met. This is how we met here in Toronto, at the Hare Krishna temple, the big temple on Avenue Road in DuPont. And same thing, we got married in this tradition. And now we have 3 beautiful daughters, and we're trying to raise them in the same fashion as both of us grew up. Yeah.
So the beautiful tradition continues.
Yeah, that's what we're really hoping, that it continues.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in both of your stories, I hear a lot the importance of community from your dad, Kevala, reaching out and connecting to a Bhakti community in Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, but Bhakti's everywhere, and then also for you, when you were moving from Russia to Israel to Canada, just like always looking for that community. And so I want to know if you can share a bit more about the importance of spiritual community in Bhakti, and then also what inspired you to step out and to share Kirtan with your community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason the saying is birds of a feather flock together, I mean, anybody who has an interest, your interest becomes fueled and becomes far more deeper and nuanced when we have a chance to come together with others who share a like-minded approach. And so for us, I think community is integral when it comes to the path of bhakti, because while in many ways it is an individualistic path where you're meant to kind of traverse your own spiritual journey, it is aided and it is helped and it is nudged along by all those who are around you, and you also support them.
You always look up to someone who's kind of more advanced in this practice.
Yeah, you get a chance to be surrounded by folks who are more advanced than you, and you can learn from them. And then you get to have a chance to be with peers who are kind of on the same path as you are. And then you eventually encounter folks that are like what we'd say is junior to you, someone who's newer to the path, and you have a chance to help them. That's what community is, right? And, all of this can be seen as like a little microcosm in a kirtan, because in a kirtan, you can have maybe 10 people or 30 people or sometimes more. And you have those who are there who are like, yep, I understand this. I'm right with it. And they're helping to uplift maybe someone who's a little bit newer. And we're all kind of like helping each other along on this path. So, I mean, that to me is the role of community. It cannot be overstated, the importance of the role of being part of a community. We've gone through phases. Taravali alluded to a time in Israel. I mean, I recently, have had a time when even being away from community is difficult, when you go through personal challenges or struggle. And I think it's a time that when you're within community, you really learn to appreciate and have the importance of it. And then to answer your other question about what inspired us to share. I can get there, but did you want to maybe share anything about, from your side, the importance of community?
Well, like the importance of community. I mean, I think you kind of mentioned all the points already. That honestly, like, I think this what keeps me kind of on this path until these days. The community. I can't imagine myself without our friends who are like-minded, and our family who are practicing the same. So it's like this mutual support and this, inspiration to keep going. And I like that you just keep looking at someone who's more advancing, like, okay, yeah, I want to get there. I want to get those qualities that this person has. I want to be more kind and more patient and more compassionate, and, just develop all these qualities that this person has. And what does it take is, this years of practice and years of being surrounded by the same people. So.
Yeah, I hate to belabor the point, but it is also often through the agency of community, at least in the Eastern-based traditions, that you can somehow get linked up with a teacher or a guru. And we both had that opportunity through community. That's not to say that it cannot happen on a singular level. It certainly can. But it is found that, yeah, a community allows you to be in an environment, in an ecosystem where, yeah, it seems to be easier to link up with a teacher who can be your personal guide. And that's something that we both had the opportunity to do. Which excuse if Taravali steps away for a bit with baby.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a-okay. Yeah, I appreciate the mentioning of that relationship between the individual, very personal, internal experience of communing with the heart center and communing with the divine presence that rests here, but then also the importance of sharing that and receiving that and strengthening that within a collective. Because I think, yeah, that's when there's a greater practice of where it's easy to, be connected to God when you're by yourself, when you're your only responsibility and like it's just you. But it's a whole nother thing to put that wisdom and that presence and that love and devotion into practice, with the world around you, people who are consciously a part of your bhakti community, and then people who are just a part of the community of life,
Yeah, you articulated that so well. And you're right. I mean, it's almost like two parallel tracks where you are ultimately rowing your own boat. But when you look around and see others kind of doing the same, it really encourages you. So, I mean, yeah, you articulated that beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have a little storytelling session for folks. Like if there is a meaningful experience or a very profound point of connection that you had, whether that's you, leading kirtan or you being, a responder to, a part of the call and response. Any profound moments that you would like to share? Because I know there have been so many for me. I love kirtan.
You want to go first or should I?
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, and this speaks to, excuse me, this speaks probably to your earlier question as well as to like what inspired us to even do this, to get out there and share kirtan. And I think it begins with that kind of profound effect. As mentioned earlier, the path of bhakti yoga takes many shapes and forms in your day-to-day life. Kirtan is just one very profound element of it. And I would say that like that's kind of what spoke to me. I mean, I was just a kid. I must have been 7 or 8 years old when my dad first got me a drum, like the specific kind of drum that we use in a kirtan. Percussion is so powerful, as we all know, in many cultures. It just is like the heartbeat of any kind of like rhythmic gathering. And so the drum that you often see in kirtans, well, I mean, actually you can see any kind of drum in a kirtan, but the ones that we tend to be in will have this mridanga or shri kol, commonly known as just a mridanga, which is a larger term for this type of drum. So my dad, I remember me and my brother, who are just 3 years apart, I think he realized like that kind of male energy at a young age. Let's channel that somewhere. So he ordered a drum from Los Angeles, and it was like a fiberglass drum that had these straps. And I had grown up seeing this drum in Hare Krishna communities and Bhakti communities, but to have my own now. So, that was like a big, very like cathartic moment for me, was like childhood, there's something about playing this drum. And me and my brother, who has since now gone on his own path, he's not really so spiritual, and hey, that's cool. But we used to be so addicted to that drum that my parents had to kind of come up with a system where, on even days he got to play, and on odd days I got to play that one drum. Like we were
Yeah.
that like crazy about playing that drum. So there was something about it. And I just remember as I got older into my teenage years, always having this element of this playing this mridanga, this kol, and listening to cassettes of kirtan, cassettes back in the day. So I'm an 80s child, 80s and 90s child. So like listening to cassettes of kirtan and trying to rhythmically keep up with the mridanga, the drum playing. And so I think as I got a little better and better at playing the drum, it was natural that when I would be in kirtans in community, they'd say, "Hey, why don't you play?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I could try to play." And I was like nervous like anyone else, but it became this like kind of like snowball effect where the more I got to be in kirtans and playing Mridanga, the more I wanted to play. And then it all kind of culminated when not at a point when I was already quite serious about this path, that I saw the power of sharing with others. When you're in a community, it's insular, it's powerful, it's like boiling milk. But then when you splash outside and you share with someone else and you see the light within them kind of spark, at a young and tender age, that really spoke to me, that I was like, whoa, this passion of mine playing the drum and being in kirtans, giving that to others and seeing someone light up, that like, whoa, this is cool, chanting. It just was like, yep, it became something that was like an addiction to me. So, through hook and crook, we found a way to kind of start to share that. We're going back now about 16 years ago now that we started sharing kirtan. We had already met by this time,
Wow.
and we've kind of formalized it as like a way to do it in outreach, and sharing, particularly with spiritual and yoga communities. So I guess to answer the question, and kind of both questions, is like the drum was what it was for me. It was the rhythm, and I have the calloused. You can't see it here, but the calloused, dry hands to prove it. Of
Yes.
30 plus years of playing. That was the draw to me. Was the
How do
drum.
you, how do you answer that after this?
Taravali's like, how do I follow up with that? How do I follow up with that? I talk a lot. Sorry.
Okay. We're here to talk.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's the same way. Seeing, like being in kirtans and sharing it with others. And there's something about it, something very, very special, and like something that is not from this world. You definitely can feel it with your heart when others are chanting as well, and you can hear everyone's voices. And it's just like this back and forth, sharing the energy, and you're just going deeper and deeper in your heart and trying to connect to divine, to the names. And yeah, there's just something about that energy that just keeps inspiring you to do it again and again.
But also for you, I think childhood. Like
Yeah.
Taravali, who would have thought in like Russia of all places, like post initial communism falling down Russia, that here she was in Bhakti communities, Hare Krishna communities, and like powerful, powerful kirtans. She's shown me clips of these, and you can see them. But like, I think that probably had a really powerful
Yeah,
effect.
we used to attend like huge festivals with thousands of people, and like it's like a concert like Kirtan. It was so cool. So all the swamis and
Chanters and
chanters,
rhythm, and who would have? That always blows my mind. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
parents are from India. We came to Canada during the height of multiculturalism as it's exploding. I kind of get it, but to be in a region of Russia not far from Georgia, which has both the Orthodox Christian but also Muslim strong influences, and to be this little minority group that's just like heart beating kirtan,
Hare
like that's
Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
I can see how that would be profound on me too as a child. So not to speak for you, but that's
well,
what
that helps.
Yeah. I think sometimes, like I like to think about the greater divine intelligence. At some way,
yeah.
in some point, if Bhakti was supposed to find you, it's going to find you, whether that is in Memphis, Tennessee, or deep in a small town in Russia.
So
You got that right. Yeah, we don't believe in this
Yeah.
idea of coincidence. I
yeah.
mean, if you
Yeah.
put out that request, the response from the universe comes, and it takes the shape and
Mm-hmm.
form in many ways, sometimes in some challenging ways that you might not expect,
Yeah.
but it's there.
And we always hear this amazing stories of how people have come in contact with this traditional, this lifestyle, and it's just really, you just sit there and you're like, how did that happen? It's just divine intervention for sure.
Well, and we feel that this is, how you understand the divine God, what we would say Krishna, we call this name all the time in our kirtans. How you understand that the idea fundamentally to us is that it's reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up with this faith, but at the same time, my parents had me in Catholic school here in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto
Yeah.
area. So there was always this impression of, you see that the idea of God, like Michelangelo's God, like beard,
Mm-hmm.
long hair, far, far away. But bhakti brings God right close to you. So this idea of reciprocity is there. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, not a coincidence. Things happen to all of us. Sometimes it feels like we stumbled on a path, but the
Mm-hmm.
argument back is that no, like that's a reciprocation going on. You had some
Yeah.
karma coming your way that you had a chance to cross this path.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the people I find I converse with in this podcast and in my life, it comes up in every conversation, just like this like choiceless choice. Where you're I chose this, but I also like it kind of chose me. So it's like, sure, I chose, if you
Yeah,
can say that,
yeah, that's
it
right. I love
reminds me
that.
of
You're
that.
right. We have this
Yeah.
little bit of free will that we dabble and play with, but then sometimes in
Mhm.
retrospect, you realize, oh, there was far more elements involved than I realized.
So many, so many. I mean, I would love to speak a bit deeper on that. You mentioned earlier how you had explored and connected to many different faiths, from like exploring Islam to Christianity, and have come to this point. And I can share from my own experience, like same path. I was like, oh, all of the ways in which I can know God. Like, let me just see this and learn from this. And what I love so dearly about the Bhakti path, and so many of the other paths, like it sort of gets me to the heart, like the heart of God, the heart of spirituality. We just keep coming back to the heart. um, but I'm curious if you can speak maybe a bit more about the universality of a path that is grounded in the heart,
Yeah, I love
perhaps,
that.
or just anything around that.
I love the question. My only fear is that this conversation could go for hours and hours because it's
I
so, I love this kind of stuff. I think
know.
that for me, um, as I briefly mentioned, my parents had me in Catholic school, and it was a real trip, the thought of it. But their idea back in the 80s and 90s, and this is all my siblings, was that, well, be exposed to some spirituality. The public school system at that time didn't really have world religions or anything like that. So they said, just be exposed to some morality. Let's see where that goes. And, you know, so I had a chance to learn about, gospels and parables and Jesus at school. And I come home and read the Gita and the Bhagavad Purana and learn about ancient, beautiful stories from the Bhakti tradition. That was probably kind of what was a launching pad for me personally. That when I got to probably grade 11 here, I felt like, I want to kind of see what else is out there. And so in my own little way, I tried to study formally, like, the Jewish path. And I had some familiarity with the Catholic, but I wanted to see more about other Christian faiths and Islam and Buddhism. And um, it's it's a powerful practice because what you learn, well, you have to choose this, but what you learn is that there's far more common than difference. And it's a little sad state of the world that we tend to focus on the differences. I mean, blood has been shed due to differences, and that to me is the greatest shame. Because frankly speaking, at the end of the day, if you can activate love of the divine in whatever shape or form that takes, uh, and if you can do that through loving each other and finding love for yourself, isn't that a common principle amongst almost all spiritual traditions? And shouldn't we use that as commonality to, understand that we're speaking the same language, just maybe in different dialects and accents and tones? And so I think that was kind of what rooted me back was reading, you know, an incident where our that where Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as he was known, was in
Mhm.
Australia, in Melbourne, not Sydney, in Melbourne, and he was talking to Franciscan monks and saying, and they said to him like, what are your thoughts or opinions about Francis of Assisi? This is their like,
Mhm.
what we would call in Sanskrit Ishtadev, their inspirational path, Saint Francis. And he responded to them by saying, "What is Saint Francis like? Tell me more about what his beliefs were." Because he was doing this little kind of a connecting conversation with them. And they said, well, St. Francis, he would go and say, like, brother tree, sister bird. He would see everything as family. There's a union between everything. And
Mhm.
Srila Prabhupada or Bhaktivedanta Swami's eyes went wide and said, yes, this is true realization. That we see divinity
Mhm.
in everything. We see the commonality in everything. And he kind of touched the hearts of these Franciscan monks and said, like, the crux of what he was saying was we're all on a similar path. We should be
Mhm.
encouraging each other. So I love the
Mhm.
thought that you can be a Christian bhakti yogi, you can be a Muslim bhakti yogi, you can be a Jewish bhakti yogi, you can just be a bhakti yogi. So it
Mhm.
doesn't require you to be a card carrying member or change anything. Just take whatever spiritual path you have, add a little mantras, add a little kirtan, add a little
Mhm.
heartfulness, and watch what happens.
Mhm.
So I think there's like this really powerful universality to the approach where it's
Mhm.
embracing everything and encompassing everything. And at the same time, it's so like it's a very clear, it doesn't get washed away. It's very clear in its approach and how to
Mhm.
the steps to take to really like channel bhakti in the heart. So it's kind of that both of them are there.
Mhm.
I hope that
Definitely.
answered the questions properly.
Mhm.
You answered it perfectly. You answered it authentically. Um, yeah, which is really, really beautiful. I appreciate that story because I know in a book, and I'm forgetting the author's name. It's over there. Yes, Radhanath Swami, The Journey Within, speaks about the Bhakti path, and he shares a similar story where he was on like a college campus,
Yeah.
and there was a Christian preacher like yelling at him, "Oh, you're like an idolater. You're like all of these things," and there was a lot of opinion, I guess, grounded in ignorance and not in a curiosity, is seeking to understand. And he had mentioned, he was like, okay, in response to this, do you, Krishna, meaning, the all attractive one, he was like, do you feel like your God is just like all attractive? And he was like, yes, I do. And then he just sort of kept naming, all of these different qualities that were
Quality.
connected um, to the divine, and then he was able to find that connection, and eventually the story ends with the preacher joining kirtan events, joining bhakti gatherings, and there's the softening of the heart too, and in not letting this sense of like division that's so common in this world harden us off from each other, and like I am right, there's only one way. But I guess seeing the limitlessness and the infiniteness of the divine and the beauty that we get to experience, that beauty, through all of these different modalities, and for that to be a point of connection, to me, that's the goal, for us to unite through what we're already united through.
Yeah, you said it so beautifully. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. It's so true. And, you know, the ancient yoga texts of the East say that this is a time where quarrel and hypocrisy are rampant. It does
Mm,
happen. And you can see that the world is built on this idea of fostering divisions. And,
mm,
look at the culture wars going on now, where
yeah.
there's classism, there's genderism, there's sexism, there's, all these things that are there. And it really is rooted on this idea that like, you know, we're divided. And so, while so many of those causes are so true and just, and I frankly support a lot of them, at the same time, I have this deep understanding that, you know, we have to kind of swim against the current of materialism that says, how
Mhm,
do we divide ourselves and how do we fend for ourselves and fight with each other? And rather
mm,
say, let's look for unification. Let's find places where we're common. And that exactly is it, like if we
mm,
can acknowledge the light and the presence of divinity in the heart, if we can connect and find the beauty in each other's spiritual practices,
mhm,
if if somebody can come with their own spiritual wealth and sit in a kirtan with us and chant and say like, wow, like that really bolstered my own spiritual, hey, that's great. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
So anybody who follows a spiritual path has that challenge put before them. Be an agent of finding common good as opposed to feeding into this kind of like divisive
Mm-hmm.
world, political world that we're all suffering through, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Would you want to say anything, Tara, about that, about this? Anything that's in your heart right now, you can also share.
yeah, I wanted to express the same thing, that I think what also has kept me in this on this path, is just um, this philosophy that, it's not like someone is good or bad, and like I grew up, my grandmother on both sides, grandparents were Christian, and so it's predominantly Christian in Russia. So like I grew up, going to churches too, and just appreciate Jesus and appreciate the qualities that Christians practice, and um, it's also very close to my heart. So it's not like I grew up like, it's also my upbringing, like my mom and my dad, that they kind of taught me to just respect everyone and love everyone for who they are, and don't discriminate. So I think it's kind of resonated with our values, and also the yoga path, Bhakti Yoga Path. So yeah, kind of the same along the same lines of just you said universality.
Mm-hmm.
Of yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just being present in the heart and seeing everyone equal, and just helping each other, supporting each other, just being humans first, like compassionate and
Mm-hmm.
I think we're both lucky to have had
yeah,
parents that kind of like put us in nice environments. I mean, they had, they had their fair share of shortcomings. I mean, all parents do, even we do as parents now, but it
Mm-hmm.
inspired us to kind of be doing what we're doing and hopefully sharing that with our three little girls, right?
yeah,
Mm. Completely. Completely. Yeah. Hearing you mention that, Tara, I think about, you reminded me again of the union at the heart of it, the union of yoga, like yoga meaning to yoke, to unite. You mentioned this, Kevala, but if that's at the heart of whatever path chooses you and whatever path you choose, the union, with the presence within and then expressing that without, what else? What else is
And
there to do?
that's all we're doing in kirtan. We're trying to, when you
Yeah.
sit in a kirtan, whether you're there for the very first time in a kirtan or if you're there having gone to kirtans forever, I mean, all you're doing is trying to tap into that same energy and vibration. And it has
Mm.
this profound effect of nourishing the heart. There's something about music, right? We all know this. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why it's universal across all cultures. But there's something
Yeah.
about the music that is so fundamentally from the heart and spiritual in itself. So when you come together and chant in music, you're nourishing the heart space. But then we say this in our kirtans, you're like putting out this energy and
I was gonna say the same thing.
we believe it that like you're creating these waves of energy that every entity around you can feel whether they know it or not. There's a
Mm.
vibrational energy, and we've seen this in some of our kirtans where it's not just the folks in the kirtan but people outside that are kind of like, what's going on in that room over there, like we're that was cool, we could hear something, like that's cool. So like
Yeah.
um you know to be able to take that energy and to utilize it in such a positive way, I think is
Mm.
has a very powerful impact on the heart and then those around you as well.
Yeah, and we've seen also so many people who never experienced this, and they come and they just, you can just see tears rolling
Yeah,
down
yeah,
that,
sure.
and then see in their
Yeah.
face, and they were like, what was this about? At the end, they were like reflecting, they're like, I don't know what happened to me. It's just, I couldn't help it. I just was
Yeah.
crying and crying. It's almost like this, like, for sure it's at at the heart level. Like, how else can
Mm.
you, can you explain it?
Mm. Completely.
And sorry to
Completely.
keep going here, but like I mean, on a skin deep level, someone might say, "Oh, it's because, you had your microphone set that way, and because Taravali sings, has a beautiful voice, and oh, the drum set." I mean, that's all the superficial stuff. At the end of the day, we feel like we're just serving in some capacity, and so it's really the mantras and the vibration and the energy that we're just tapping into. We're just conduits, actually. So by no means do we feel like it's us that's doing that. It's just
Yeah.
we're channeling this energy that has been used for millennia. And so, yeah, people have this profound effect where a lot of emotions come out. Sometimes it's pure joy. Sometimes it's crying in kirtans, whatever it might be. But it definitely, yeah, it's powerful.
And I love that you mentioned that because you can't intellectualize it. Mind will try. The mind will try to be like, oh, this is why. But when you just drop into it, yeah, there's a beautiful grace. And I guess, yeah, back to the universality. But I also want to say, I think the energy, having gone to one of your wonderful events and having like in the other kirtan events that I've attended, and then when I'm practicing and singing mantra on my own, there's something about being a conduit. We can feel also the energy of devotion in
Yeah.
which y'all are putting into this act of chanting, this act of, because I feel like I love devotional music from so many different traditions, whether it's like kirtan or whether it's kawalis or whether it's
Yeah.
nama music. Like there's
Yeah.
just, and I think it's because you can hear the devotion even if I don't understand what is being said. There's something about that energy of devotion and the intention of awakening love that just like that speaks to something that maybe we can't understand.
Yeah. I mean,
So we can just feel it, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
think
can just
Yeah.
you
feel.
got it right. I think that's why we always kind of carry that. I wouldn't call it pressure, more like responsibility. Like if we are trying to serve the world in this way, in this small way, I mean, really, we're just putting on little humble kirtan events in and around Toronto. There are people that are doing far more amazing things in the kirtan space. But one thing that we try to share with them is a mood of humility through it. But also another mood is trying to walk the talk. So
Yes.
we really don't want to, and I try not to say this with pride, but we don't want to put on a performance and then okay, right back to our mundane style life. We are trying to like walk the same path, and so that comes to like our daily practice or trying to remember the tenets of bhakti in our day-to-day lives and how we raise our kids and having time for our own personal meditation, which is hard to come by nowadays with three little kids, but trying to just walk that talk as well. And so I think that plays a big role too. I mean, like you said, not just a conduit, but your personal practice, your own consciousness goes into what you're doing. Even, I mean, as simple as food. I mean,
I was gonna say something.
Yeah.
Still no words, yeah.
yeah, like, when you're cooking something, when there's love and intention,
Also depends what you
Yeah.
do.
what you put in your body. So all those things are factors. So I think that we try taking that somewhat seriously and we try our best. We're by no means perfect, but we try to walk that talk as well in our day-to-day life so that when we have the chance to share, that maybe we can help others.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning again the holistic nature of it because, yeah, the prasad and like when we're actually connecting with the food that is created with the thought of the divine and honoring too, I mean, just like the essence and the process it took to even just get this food to nourish, like there's just so much there. And I want to know actually from both of you, walking the talk. Um, what that what that looks like, and maybe if there's an example of like what that looks like, maybe a challenge that you faced and where you were asked to sort of step deeper into, oh, okay, this is a point of practice, or even just advice for folks for how to walk the talk of, we can talk about love, we can talk about unity, we can talk about humility, we can talk about compassion. And then the world is the practice, it's the field of practice. So, what has that looked like for you in your life? And yeah, anything you want to share around that?
I love that.
Leave it open.
Yeah, I love that. What do you want to share?
I think personally, like maybe you'll talk about your personal challenge you've gone through. Yeah.
I was going to,
Yeah.
Dream.
For me, it's I can
Motherhood.
I can add on that as well after you speak, but like we've been living with Kevala's parents now for the last year and a half.
Yeah, my parents are getting older. We're kind of here to take care of them and be there for them.
But
And
it also helps. It's like living in a family unit, bigger family unit than we used to usually. So I think for me personally, that's been a big learning curve. It's just being more conscious of like being around other people and how you react to if something is said in a way that you don't like, and then you're like, okay, so of course there were moments where like I said something wrong, I didn't feel right, and then I'm trying to work on myself. I'm like, yeah, that was not right, and I have to get better at this, or I have to do better next time, and also just try to remember, like every morning, like I have this prayer just to please divine allow me not to like upset any my loved ones around me or with my words, and let me just remember that whatever comes my way is by your will, and let me give me strength to just bear the day, and just be grateful and be prayerful. So I think that's one. And also, of course, kids are the biggest. They put you to the biggest patience, tests, and just they bring everything out of you that you thought you were like you never had that, and you're like, oh my God, I can really scream like this, or I can really be like this angry, or like this and like this, and you just think, no, I really have to just work on this. I can't. So it's like that's personally how I'm trying to kind of bring my practice into like practical life around me. So I'm not sure if it makes sense.
I mean, parenthood has been a unique challenge for us. I mean, we have 3 little girls who are at this time like 5 years old, 3.5, and almost 11 months. So that's like 3 kids within 4.5 years. And all of them, I mean, I know it's shame sharing this. It was by design. Like we chose when we wanted to have our kids. We wanted it this way. And, there are days that we're like, why did we choose to do this way? Like there's so many kids so close together. But most days, I think we just see how beautiful it is, especially when we see them kind of trying to carry the same principles of life that we try to live by. But yeah, there's unique challenges there for sure that challenge your practical day-to-day life. Taravali alluded to it, but for me, I think, I was on this path of, activating my bhakti, my practice that had me like fully immersed and very much part of a very large community here in Toronto. I went through personal challenges about like 10 years ago, going on 9 years ago or so. And, that was a real, I guess you could say, self-imposed slap in the face where suddenly you don't have everything and suddenly you need a little time away and suddenly you need to really fall back on the basics. And so when you go through challenges, when you go through hardship, when you go through great periods of humiliation, again, sometimes self-imposed, those are times when I think you learn that, okay, this is a good time to fall back on my own personal practice and try to tap into that inner strength. And aided by, our guru, our teacher, aided by peers and those who care about us and mentors, we navigated those choppy waters and coming out of it feeling stronger than ever. So I would say that it's not always a walk in the park. There are within a day you can have like those ups and downs, as we all know, but then sometimes you just go through really rough patches of life. You're going through like astrologically a difficult time where for a couple of years everything's going wrong, and sometimes you feel like you are the victim. Sometimes you are victimizing yourself with your poor decisions, and then you go through periods where things are going really great. Things are just clicking in place, and so the Gita teaches us that to ride those waves, to learn not to get too high during the highs and don't let your ego run away with itself. And during the lows of lows, try not to just let yourself sit in the doldrums of depression. Try to find that equanimity, find that equal space, and the path of meditation, of japa or chanting mantras on beads, of being with like-minded spiritual folks, of reading and finding nourishment in ancient teachings, of sitting in kirtans where you get a chance to really joyfully express mantras. These are all things that can help lift you during the low times and help keep you kind of grounded during the high times. So,
I think the key is just to keep at it through like hard times and easy times. I think that's the essence also of the practice as well. So you don't just remember and pray, remember the divine when it's hard for you, right? You also think if something good is happening. That's what the bhakti yoga is. You always try to
keep it going
and think, like, whatever you're doing, think about the divine, about service to others in whatever shape and form it comes.
Or as our guru, his name is Vaisheshika Dasa, he's based out of California, as he says, KTTVJ, KTTVG, which is keep the transcendental vibration going. Just keep that transcendent vibration going along. No matter what life besets you with, just keep it going, keep chugging along, and you'll find that things start to fall in place,
Yeah.
It's how we react to things, right? We can't control what happens because it will always be up and down. This is the nature of the world, but it's how we have the choice of how to react to these things.
Absolutely. I appreciate hearing that wisdom of evenness. It's like even the Gita says evenness of mind, but I think it's also the evenness of being. Like, okay, like no matter what, I want to continue, being from that point. And I guess, sometimes we have to go through the polarities to strengthen our devotion ultimately to what we know and feel from experience from the path that we walk. I would love to take a moment to just talk a bit more about devotion and the awakening of that like divine transcendental love, like that love that transcends a lot of the conditions that we place on love culturally in all the different ways. In the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, they say that devotion, bhakti, is the surest way to perfection, to this like union with God, to spiritual purity, to liberation. So I'm like, how do you practice this devotion to God? And I guess you mentioned that by like that continued practice through the ups and downs. But just opening up space for that.
Yeah,
I see devotion personally through your parenting. I just had to say, like watching you, tend to Yamuna, and then also at the events, like I see a lot of your devotion to God and your devotion to them. And so I just had to mention that.
Oh, that's sweet of you. Although at 2:30 in the morning, I'm not sure where that devotion is. I wake up wailing and screaming.
Yeah.
The Bhagavad Gita, this ancient timeless text, you're right, the heart of it in chapters 9 and 10 really speak to bhakti. And it's almost like you could argue the first 6 chapters set the tone. The middle 6 chapters focus on bhakti. So the first 6 chapters kind of focus on karma yoga, and then the middle 6 on bhakti, the heart, and then the last 6 on jnana, the empirical knowledgeable side. And then in the heart of those middle 6 chapters, chapters 9 and 10, Krishna talks about this. He talks about how channeling this mood of devotion and love is like the most supreme way. And if you think about it, I mean, it just sounds so intuitive to me that all we're trying to do is tap into that love. I mean, it's one of the most powerful feelings we have in this world. I mean, we talk about puppy love or lust in its own contorted way and things, and you see how it can actually, I mean, empires can fall just due to the love of that people have between each other, or the queen and the king, or something like that. And so the source of divine love is something that is like this unlimited source of energy, this untapped resource that many of us don't realize is there. And so I think the path of bhakti is very personal, and that's what I think it just feeds so well into this mood of devotion, you know? Like you can just say the word devotion, but who are you channeling that towards, you know? Yes, devotion towards country, towards society, towards community, towards our family. Those are all very important. But if you can see a commonality or a root to all these branches and twigs and leaves, parts of the cosmological tree, then you can say, oh, wow, here's the source, you know? And we would understand that to be Krishna, you know? And if you just put out this loving energy towards Krishna, reciprocation comes. And so it can just be moments of prayer in your day, or when you go through challenging times. It can be that time when you spend time building the fortitude where you try to, for us, try to grab our beads, our mantra beads, and do a little chanting when we have time, if we have time to do that. You know, it's playing kirtan in the background as you're cooking, you know. It's regaling our children with beautiful stories from ancient yoga texts like the Bhagavad Purana or even the Gita, which is itself a beautiful story of you know, Arjuna who's on his own soul quest or journey. So when you surround yourself in this way, I think you find these little touch points for your devotion throughout your day, and you have these opportunities to activate it and to try to open yourself to feeling love coming both this way and then coming back to you. And I think it's something that I wish the world just tapped into more of it, this idea of devotion, you know, and how powerful that can be. When you channel that towards the divine, towards Krishna, towards whomever you understand the divinity, the form of divinity to take, and then open yourself to be that vessel to receive back and kind of go like, oh, you know, like I've been hearing this message a bit that, you know, I should start a podcast and do something like that. And you do it like Sydney does, you know, and that's being open to hearing that feedback from the universe, from Krishna, from the divine, from those around you, and then kind of feeding it right back. So it's this beautiful cycle of devotion that takes place.
And whatever you do, like whether it's having kids or, you know, just working or eating, whatever you do is supposed to, it's like an offering to the divine. So it's like when I look at my kids, of course, like I have affection for them, I love them, but if I kind of look more like beyond that, it's like, okay, this is a big responsibility for me from the divine, and it's my responsibility to raise them right, and you know, to also foster that love in them for the divine. So I have to do it right. You know, this is my responsibility. Or whether it's working, it's like, what is the actual purpose of working? Is it so I can enjoy, you know, like, and get, get a lot of money and then just enjoy, you know, traveling or whatnot? Or is it because like, I just want to, you know, donate maybe, you know, towards some cause, spiritual cause, or, you know, this is also my responsibility to maintain my family. And you kind of look at things like differently, as in like an offering. Or like when you cook, like, is it like because I just, you know, I want to enjoy this beautiful meal, or is it like I will make this in the most kind of spiritual consciousness? I'll prepare this food and then I'll offer it with love to the divine, because this is the least I can do, you know, for the divine. So then this becomes prasadam, or like sanctified food. Yeah. And then we honor that. And so, like you said, receiving back.
Yeah, and I think like that's where the beauty of bhakti is, don't try to stop what you're doing. A lot of meditational paths try to go with this nullification approach, which is like block out the world, sit in a room quietly, and just focus on nothingness and just be meditating there. And that's, don't get me wrong, it's powerful for those who can do it. But the beauty of bhakti is that it just says, take everything you're doing, keep doing it, but flip it on its head how you're doing it for. Like you're not doing it for your own satisfaction. You actually have a level of detachment. It's a big theme in the Gita. You're detached because you're saying, I'm putting this out as a service, as an offering. Whatever results come, let them be. Let them be, whatever the results are, you know, but you're putting that out as a loving divine offering. And so you still have a job. I mean, Tara's a nurse. I have my own little business as a consultant, as a marketing consultant. We still work. We still do the things that everyone else seems to be doing.
Responsibility for family.
Yeah, we got to put gas in our car, unfortunately, and you have to go pay those bills and those are all the same things we're doing. But we are trying. I'm not saying we're good at this or perfect at it by any means, but we're trying to say, whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to make this. I'm trying to visualize it as like a little offering on a plate, and let me just give that. Let me give that to Krishna. Let me give that to the world. Let me try to just make this not about me. It's not about me. It's about just trying to put it out there.
That's what we wanted to share Kirtan as well, serve the community,
That's why we do Kirtan.
Yeah, that's what it came from.
Yeah, I mean, it's with great effort with 3 little kids hanging off of us at any point in time to try to organize Kirtans. But we do it because we feel moved to share the beauty of this path and to invite others to try the same. You don't need to become a monk and shave your head. I mean, you can if you'd like, but you don't have to.
And meditate in the mountain.
Yeah, you can if you'd like. But for the vast majority of us who have day-to-day lives, the encouragement through our kirtans is, find a way to alter your perspective on your world, on your life, and say, like, let me just make this a devotional offering. Let's see what happens if I do that. If I become a little more equal to the ups and downs, if I become a little more detached to the results that come, whatever comes, and if I just have this heartfulness, and then, once in a while, I'll come together with like-minded spiritual folks, chant my heart out, charge those batteries, and walk out of that room feeling like I'm walking on a cloud of air, because that's what helps me keep the energy going, keep the transcendental vibration going. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful answers. And what I hear from you both is seeing the practice itself as the devotional act. Because, I don't know. That's what's arriving. When I listen to this, I'll be like, there's so much more. But just like in receiving all that you had shared.
It goes back to the heart, right? I mean, devotion and love and the heart space and bhakti, these all kind of live in the same little bubble as how we feel. They're all intertwined.
Definitely. What I'm sitting with now and having to even practice that with this podcast. We talked about this before we started to record when you asked about, how it felt to have this podcast out into the world now. And I was like, before I would have been very attached to even if I really valued this and really believed in this, I would have been like, I'm not getting 5,000 likes and I'm not, getting all of these, this external response that affirms, this has value. But I'm actually this has value regardless of if it has any likes. If one person shows up, I'm enjoying it as a devotional, as a way for me to give myself, offer myself, like you had mentioned, Tara, offer myself to the divine as a conduit for that love, for that devotion, for whatever, wants to come through me, through you guys, in this conversation, just offering ourselves.
That's so beautiful.
That.
It's so beautiful, and it's so encouraging to see folks like yourself doing this type of thing. And you're right. I mean, not being detached from the results doesn't mean that we don't put effort. We do our best, but let the results come as they be. I mean, Bhaktivedanta Swami, known as Srila Prabhupada, who happens to be the guru of our guru and the guru of Radhanath Swami, the aforementioned Radhanath Swami, would often remark that if just one person's heart is changed, then this effort is a success. So for us, it sounds very, poetic and nice, but I believe that. I mean, if we can just help one person along the way through all of our kirtans, and if one person's heart is changed towards a positive from your podcast, that makes it all fruitful. It makes it all worthwhile,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I even think, I feel in my heart the world needs are more people connected to that point. Because one person, sure, we see one person, but we don't see all of the engagements and all of their relationships and all of their interactions for the rest of their life being impacted by an opening and awakening to the divine love already seated within them, So there's so much beauty in also seeing that reflected in you and the sacred work that you do, in all ways.
Thank you.
And maybe we can close. This will be might be my final question, because a final question might come at the end. I actually have two more questions, but this one is, again, because this podcast was created with this understanding of how walking ultimately the path, walking the talk of spiritual traditions around the world can result in a transformed world. You know, when we see a lot of the suffering and the pain and the disconnect, that is just, we keep sowing over and over and over again. I feel in my heart, if we are connected to what unites us beyond all division, and do our best to act from that point and create from that point, the kind of world that we're searching for can be realized, like through each and every one of us. So I had written down, part of the divine grace of the Bhakti path is the experience of liberation that comes from this experiential knowing of divine love, not just as a recipient of it, but also being a vehicle for it to come through. And so what role do you feel, or even have you seen divine love have in this world? And what role do you think it can have during this time of just collapse, polycrisis, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you said it right. I think that sometimes it helps to take a step back and just take a little snapshot of the world that we're in and realize that there are sadly people or countries or governments or companies or whatever that are just, they are profiting from the idea of sowing this mood of divisiveness and anger and hate and all those kind of things. And I consider myself an optimistic person. And so the way I see it is that it's quite evident that's there, but I believe very firmly that there is far more love and joy and spirituality that's underlying. It's just waiting to come out. It's just waiting to manifest. And sometimes it just takes all this, for lack of a better term, crap to just build up to a point that we get sick of it. I mean, that's why a lot of people come to our kirtans. They're just like, I need this and the world needs this. I'm fed up with this kind of like constant, barrage of negativity that we see and people that are benefiting from that. And so I feel like if you can just peel back that layer of all that stuff that's trying to bring us down, lying under there is this untapped resource of an unending resource of joy and love and devotion that we can all actually be a part of. And so I believe if more and more people just found a way to tap into that, if more and more people just sat in a kirtan, I mean, you might just find that there is an impact on the world, and the world definitely needs it. It needs it. Yamuna needs it right now. She needs some love. She's with grandma right now in the next room. We can hear her wailing away.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like if we can take that personal responsibility, to both bring that into our own lives, and then in our immediate circle, try to foster this more devotional, positive, intentional way of living. And without force, we're not trying to force anybody along their own path, but just encourage and uplift others. And then on a community basis, I feel like the dominoes start to fall, things start to happen. And so, while many a times the reflection can be, oh, what change can I make in this world? I mean, make no mistake, there is immense power in our actions and our thoughts and our words. And so, if we just each take a little bit of that responsibility to just, try to be my full self, try to uplift others around me, societies can change, and the transformations can happen in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was beautifully said. Beautifully said. I mean, I want you to share, where can listeners find you and learn more about the Kirtan Culture Initiative?
We started this about 6 years ago, the Kirtan Culture Initiative. It's just a little thing a project for Tara and I. We had a different iteration before, connected with our larger community, where we did Kirtan outreach in the yoga scene. But this has been our little baby now for the last couple of years. So what we try to do is share kirtans in and around the Toronto area. So you'll usually find us once or twice a month in the city or elsewhere. We look for spaces like cool yoga studios or alternative thinking spaces or cafes or anybody that wants to have a space that has an audience where they feel that Kirtan could help them. We'd love to go in those spaces and share. And so that's what we've been doing for the last little while. We've had little blips where go through little pauses where either a baby is born or little challenges where we have to take a little pause, but it's been consistent now for a couple of years and it's been growing and the response has been tremendous. And so it's a very open-hearted invitation to anyone that if you're in the Toronto area, come check us out for one of our kirtans. Typically they're like 2.5 hours. It sounds like a long time, but as I'm sure you would agree, it flies right by. We do call and response mantra chanting. We pick different mantras, usually end with the Hare Krishna mantra. And, Taravali lends her beautiful voice to lead, and I'm playing the drum, and we have members of our group that are helping to facilitate. It's a beautiful musical manifestation of devotion and bhakti and chanting, and everyone's welcome to come check it out. And if you're not in Toronto, if you're listening, then look up a local kirtan. It's happening somewhere in the world. It's a great way to sing like that, the way a child cries to their mother.
Exactly. Okay, I guess actually just like one more ask, because you had mentioned the Maha Mantra, and I think that would just be such a beautiful way to close.
Yeah.
And maybe naming, the significance of the Maha Mantra at this time.
Yeah, ancient yoga texts espouse many, actually unlimited amounts of mantras. The Maha Mantra is our go-to. We grew up with it. It's familiar. It's like in our blood. And it's given in the ancient Kali Santara Upanishad, along with many others, called the Maha Mantra because the mood behind it is that it encompasses all mantras within it. It's almost like you're getting the benefit of all mantras in that Maha Mantra. And it calls upon 3 divine names, Krishna, Rama, Hare. Krishna, the beautiful, all attractive. Rama, the source of all pleasure. Hare, which constitutes half the mantra, is the divine feminine energy, Radha. So when we chant the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, it is a call to foster the mood of devotion of the heart, to foster the mood of servitude and humility to the divine, to the world around me. And so you can recite this mantra just to yourself before you start your day, even for a few minutes, and see the impact it has. You can keep count, which is very powerful. Sankhya Purvakam, said in Sanskrit, to keep count using meditation beads and have a set amount of mantras you do per day. That's also extremely powerful. You can come together and sing it, which is what we always end off our kirtans with, and it's always joyfully performed. And so this Maha Mantra, I think, is what we would argue one of the greatest medicines for the world and for ourselves. It is like a salve that can be placed upon any emotional wound that we have. And so when we sing it, it usually starts out very heartfelt and soulful and very mellow. But by the end of a typical Hare Krishna Kirtan, it's usually rhythmic and joyful and chanting and dancing, and you're activating that joyful spirit that I think is there for all of us. So that lies within all of us. So I can't speak enough about the power of the Maha Mantra and why we always come back to it in the kirtans that we do, with the life that we lead.
Beautiful. Would y'all want to do just like one round of the Maha Mantra?
Yeah.
Do you have capacity?
It would be great. Do you want to hear it like
chanting or more like singing?
Maybe let's do singing.
Singing?
Let's close with your beautiful voices.
Sure.
How would you want to do it? Like this? Can you come along with this
Maybe just sing it. Huh?
Yeah. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama. I think that would be nice.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hi. Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare.
I know you could just go on and on. Sometimes I find it's hard to stop when
You're
I'm in
right.
chant.
We feel the same way.
Well, beautiful. Thank you so dearly, Kevala and Taravali, so dearly for sharing your wisdom, your love, and I will share all of the beautiful information that you share in the show notes for our wonderful listeners. We hope that this conversation, adds depth and devotion to the seed of love in your heart and supports you on your path wherever it leads. So thank you.
Well, we're so glad, Sydney, to have crossed paths with you at one of our kirtans. We know it won't be the only one. And, we're just so eternally grateful and thankful for the work that you're doing. This is very powerful work to help to uplift the consciousness of the world.
Thank you so much for doing this.
For allowing us to be part of it, we're just really thankful and humbled to be part of your amazing efforts.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. All right, folks. If you are interested in sharing your heart path story, art, or in sharing a paradigm shifting conversation on the podcast, you can find the application in the show notes or the description bar. There you will also find links to join our community on Substack, where I share personal and emergent audios related to the episode themes and my personal process of living and being another way. Come engage and connect with other listeners and co-journers in the gatherings and conversations held only on Substack. You can also find the link to my website, Jivan Mukta Healing, to learn more about the work that I do to be of service to the world at this time. Until then, I wish you and your beloveds peace and presence on the path and journey. Connect soon. Thank you for listening to Sacred Pathways, stories and wisdom from walking the heart's way. As a budding show, I would be incredibly grateful if you supported this podcast by giving us a rating, sharing this or any other episode with your loved ones in person and online, and letting me know in the comments section below how this episode resonated with you. Engagement is lovingly received and appreciated if you have received value from this. See you next time.